I'm relieved that Deputy O'Murrough has left the chamber, because I was very intimidated by the stellar heights of grade 5. I could manage the right hand and I could manage the left hand, but playing two hands together at any given time always eluded me. So, Minister, in preparing for this debate, I did read through the Bowden report, and it begins with a series of quotations from different periods in Irish life. And the introduction has a quote from a Department of Finance memorandum of 1937, which says, "Public attendance at symphony concerts and consequently the necessity for such public concerts have become smaller and will continue to decline. Is it any part of the state's duty to resuscitate a Victorian form of educational recreation?" And that really jumped out at me. I very much do believe that it's the state's duty to step in terms of cultural and artistic institutions. While I wouldn't characterise them as a Victorian form of educational recreation, I believe Miriam Lord has kind of imposed a de facto moratorium on Seamus Heaney quotes. So I'll turn again to Oscar Wilde, who said, "A cynic is a man who knows the price of everything and the value of nothing." And while I don't wish to impugn the character of the official who wrote that memo in 1937, it does speak to a certain type of cynicism, because national cultural institutions like the National Symphony Orchestra, like the National Concert Hall, they do come at a price, and very often it's at a significant price. But I strongly believe that that's a price worth paying, because their value, their cultural and artistic value, their emotional value, the value that they have within the life of a nation, of holding a mirror up to ourselves and helping us understand our place in the world, that's a value that's so many times greater than the price that we pay for it. And so, Minister, I think you're to be commended for acting on the chief recommendation of that Bowden report, which argued that the National Symphony Orchestra should be a national cultural institution in its own right, or within the National Concert Hall. And I do think the National Concert Hall is the correct home and the right home. And I very much agree with Deputy Gannon in terms of we need to make sure that the doors of the National Concert Hall are open, and that they're open to everybody, and that everybody within Irish society understands that it's their National Concert Hall. Because, Minister, as I know you well appreciate, this orchestra deserves and needs to be put on a firm footing for the future, for a number of reasons as laid out in that report. The report identified that the status quo funding model under RTE, which was so dependent on TV licence funding, was untenable. According to the report, we placed too much cultural responsibility within the one place, within RTE, in having both the concert orchestra and the symphony orchestra there, and that built a fragility into the system that ultimately was putting both orchestras at risk. And then there was underfunding, under-resourcing that had repercussions in terms of the nature and the quality of the work that both the NSO and the Chamber Orchestra were able to undertake, including the overall number of events. And I think in particular, and Deputy Gannon referred to that, and I think Deputy O'Snoddig as well, that regional touring and the outreach component. And those have been stripped back in stark contrast to the case of other European public service broadcaster orchestras, where adequate provision for both regional and youth audiences is seen as fundamental to a successful PSB orchestral strategy. It shouldn't be seen as elitist. Everybody within our society should have that ability to experience what it is to sit in front of a live orchestra, and it's really quite something when you sit in front of it, as Deputy O'Snoddig said, when you sit in front of it and you can hear those instruments literally playing in concert. So, Minister, the NSO, it's my orchestra and it's your orchestra. It's all of our orchestras. And I want to be able to see them in the NCH, but I want to be able to see them in Waterford as well. And I'm sure you want to be able to see them in Monaghan. So getting that resourcing there so that they can bring back that touring, I think that's so important. Another important aspect that we mustn't lose sight of as well, that playing in our national orchestras is a career and should be viewed as a career. I'm lucky enough, I'm married to a professional performing artist. She got past grade 5. She's not an instrumentalist, so I'm not conflicted in this regard. She's not an orchestral player. But I do know the level of skill and commitment and passion that's required to play to this level. It's a lifelong commitment. And if any musician has gone into the business of playing in an orchestra in order to get rich, then they've made some bad decisions, because it's not a get-rich-quick scheme. These people don't do it for the money, they do it for the love of it. And they do it because they know the difference between the price of a thing and the value of a thing. But that shouldn't mean that they do it for nothing, or next to nothing. For all of that, they deserve to be well paid, and they deserve to have security in their employment. And I think this bill does a lot of that. By putting the NSO in its new home, it puts the orchestra on a firmer footing facing into the future. I hope and I expect it will result in extra resources and staffing, and I welcome the Minister's details on those extra positions that have been put in place to bring the orchestra back up to its full complement that it so richly deserves. And also to help grow that programme, that outreach programme, to make sure it is an orchestra for everybody in Ireland, and it is a concert hall for everybody in Ireland. That outreach and that educational remit is so important. But Minister, I do want to say a word about choirs. I see that the Philharmonic Choir and Cornanog and Corlin have moved across. Those are voluntary choirs. I do think there's a space in a country of our size for a professional performing chamber choir, a small outfit. We have the Chamber Choir Ireland, who were previously the National Chamber Choir, but I do think there's room to expand on that and put them on a firmer footing. And I do think as well, Minister, and you know that this is a hobby horse that I've often spoke about in terms of the well-being framework, and that business of being able to distinguish between the price and the value of a thing, and how we know that GDP is a very poor measure of what our economy and our society is actually doing. And I do strongly believe that there should be a separate artistic, cultural and linguistic indicator built into that well-being framework, so that we can begin to measure metrics like how many people are getting to hear the NSO, or how many people are getting to attend the National Concert Hall. Many people are going to Croke Park. And I think that's an important aspect within our life, within our national politic, and it's something that we should be working on.
Thank you.